How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry Chapter 4. So, in this chapter, we're not following Keiichi. We're actually not following any of the main cast that we have been introduced to. Instead, we're following this average Joe investigator sort of person who is actually about to be a father. He has has gone on an embarkment, if that's a word. He has embarked to the Hinamizawa area in search of information in regards to a recent kidnapping regarding the minister's grandson. I believe that's what's going on. I've taken a few days break from playing the game because I was pretty much doing like a everyday deal coming to the end of Chapter 3. But let us continue. We have arrived at the, I guess the police station where Ushi-san works. I think we'll be meeting him. Shishibone City was as far as, I have no idea how to pronounce that word. Wow. All right, good start. But rather behind the times. I actually do not know how to pronounce that word. My English sucks, by the way. If you're new to this, get ready for that. Okonomiya, recessed in the mountains, was even more remote. With little changes between the seasons, all that was left was the tepid passage of time. It made for a rather drab town. There were no tourist attractions or local delicacies. Without even a strong regional industry, it was simply dull. Just looking at the monotonous and peaceful townscape, it was hard to catch a glimpse of the radical resistance of the Onigafuchi Guardians. The atmosphere of boredom didn't hint of the Okonomiya police station being on front lines of the damn conflict, nor of the numerous incidents that I heard about at the prefectural headquarters. Yeah, I opened up this drink, and I did not get a drink out of it.
いえ、公安部の本田屋さんにアポイントがあります。赤坂とお伝えください。
失礼しました。少々お待ちください。
The clerk, who thought I was here for a parking violation at first glance, after fumbling with the unfamiliar extension number, told the person on the line that they had a visitor.
どうもどうも。赤坂さんでいらっしゃいますか？縁のはるばるお疲れ様でした。こんな部屋で申し訳ありませんね。応接室を押さえてあったんですがね。議員さんが突然お越しになっちゃったんで追い出されちゃいまして。
I would hesitate to call where we were a conference room, as it was very small and cluttered. The cramped space was packed with lockers. I had the impression that it was more of a change room that doubled as one for smoking. Listening to his crude Chorle, whatever, I didn't get much of a feeling that, how do you pronounce his name? I almost said Honda. Hondaya, who was head of the local public safety division, was much of an intellectual. But I knew that in exchange he had both experience and absolute confidence in his instincts.
ご多忙中、突然お邪魔して申し訳ありませんでした。警視庁から参りました。赤坂と申します。よろしくお願いします。
公安部の本田屋です。よろしくよろしく。県警防隊の3階部長から協力を惜しむなと脅されておりますので。
防隊？県警の暴力団対策本部ですか？
うちじゃ鬼ヶ淵支所の連中は暴力団の延長に位置づけてますんでね。あれを善意の住民運動だなんてあんた、東城もいいとこですわ。
They said at the prefectural office, too, that the Onigafuchi Guardians was linked to the local mob. If I recall correctly, the adopted son of somebody influential was a lieutenant in that gang.
そりゃ逆。全然逆ですよ。暴力団の活動があって、それに住民団体が大義名分みたいにくっついていると、そういう風に考えてください。逆。
Hondaya was just about rolling with laughter, and this was slightly different than the info given to me at the prefectural office, but somebody embedded locally would be more knowledgeable. While we were talking, occasionally some people who seemed to be detectives would come in and change. One of those individuals, noticing Hondaya's guffas, whatever the fuck, came up to us. Ushi? Yep.
何の話をしてるかと思えば。
おお、クラちゃん、ちょうどよかった。クラちゃんも入ってよ。こちらはるばる東京の警視庁からお見えになった赤坂警部。
警部だなんて。まだまだ新米です。赤坂です。よろしくお願いします。
初々しいのがいいですね。採用は今年ですか？
I couldn't help but think I was being ridiculed, so I only responded with a forced smile. I could tell that this new person was like Hundaya, the person who had confidence in their instincts and experience. I really didn't like those types of people.
赤坂さんにもご紹介します。こちらは刑事部の大石くん。赤坂さんがお問い合わせの S 号の件なら彼が詳しいです。
S 号？
園崎の S 号ってのはですね、園崎家が関連している件を示す、まあ暗号みたいなもんなんです。
Yeah, I think we've been hearing that since like chapter 2-ish? Sonozaki. Come to think of it, I remembered when I was poring over the documents at headquarters, there were quite a few people with the last name Sonozaki popping up.
確か園崎氏は鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の役員でしたね。確か会計だったと思います。
The two of them were surprised that, or when I rattled off what post that Sonozaki held. After a moment, both of them erupted into laughter.
赤坂さんでしたっけ？あなたお勉強家さんですね。ひょっとして同盟の連中の主要人物全部暗記してるんじゃ？
暗記というほどではありませんが、一応鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の幹部リストは一読しました。
じゃあ会長と副会長は？
会長は現hinamizawa村村長の君吉喜一郎氏。
Yeah, I had actually forgotten about Kimiyoshi because he actually wasn't brought up in Chapter 3, I don't think at all. Chapter 2, he was brought up because, well, he died, or disappeared, whatever you want to call it.
副会長は町会神社部長の古出氏、会計が園崎を領して、会計監査は牧野氏、教頭部長が君吉義郎氏、広報部長が園崎貞夫氏。
赤坂さん、あなたなかなかやりますね。給料安いけどうちに来ません？うちに一番必要で一番いないタイプですよ。で、ちなみに園崎貞夫は青年部長なんです。惜しいですね。広報部長は園崎忠孝。
Feeling like I wasn't being complimented at all, I started settling into an uncomfortable mood. However, I was becoming more and more aware that I was the weakest link in this investigation, so I just had to bear with it. I didn't mean for that feeling to show up on my face, but the crafty detectives didn't let that slip by.
バカにしたつもりはないんです。お詫びと言っちゃなんですが、なんでしたら村を実際にご案内しましょう。
For somebody with no feel for the area like me, it would be a great help. I couldn't have asked for more.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟っていうのは、結局hinamizawa村の対外的な別称に過ぎません。村を知ることがあなたのお仕事の近道だと思いますよ。いかがです？
The residential movement, in other words, held influence over the whole region. So the leader of the movement was the leader of that influence. Just like that, the thought processes in the region would become the overall personality of the movement. Just like Ushi had said, in order to learn what they were really like, this regional force behind the damn protests, getting to know the village was the quickest way.
よろしくお願いします。
Nodding back without skipping a beat, Ueshi laughed in satisfaction and stood up. Off to the village. I think. If I took the information I learned at the prefectural office and from Hundaya to heart, if my position was exposed, my personal safety was at risk. The opponent was an extremist group that had no qualms about using threats or violence against somebody. If my personal info was leaked, it wouldn't be hard to imagine that I'd be in danger, whether on the job or not. Thinking that, I felt a little nervous.
連中は顔覚えるの早いですからね。私と一緒にいるところを見られると多分月並みですがね。こいつを身につけておいてください。
Higurashi handed me an incredibly suspicious disguise comprised of a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a mask. I didn't want to get all hot and stuffy, but Higurashi's warning was probably right on the money. Considering that, I put them on with appreciation. I looked so suspicious that Higurashi had to smile wryly.
どこまで話しましたかね。
御三家という旧家が村を支配しているというところまでです。
The Onigafuchi Guardians was the same as the village of Hinamizawa itself, meaning there was a direct correlation between being an executive in the alliance and being a leader in the village, as Hondaya had told me a short time ago. If the village was ruled by 3 ancient families, then it would mean the Onigafuchi Guardians was ruled by those same 3 families.
県警の資料には何て書いてありました？死守同盟のリーダー格とかそういうことについて。
The documents I was using were classified. If I responded to Ishii's question, it'd be a breach of security. However, most likely, this man I judged was more well-versed in the situation than any of the documents at the prefectural police department, so I decided to answer him.
同盟の会長は現村長の君吉喜一郎と。
Higurashi, upon hearing that, let out a small chuckle. For him to ask like that, and to laugh at the answer as it was recorded in the documents, meant that wasn't the case in reality.
では、君吉氏以外の影の人物がいる。県警の持つ、いや、一般的な情報とは異なり。
君吉のじいさんなんてただのお飾りですよ。そもそもこの村じゃ村長なんてポスト自体も形式だけなんです。
つまり同盟も村も本当の意味で支配している別の存在がいる。それが先ほどおっしゃられていた御三家という存在ですか。
まあそのあたりはこれからご説明します。
All of a sudden, with a thunk, the car suddenly lurched. The paved road had given way to a gravel one. At the same time, the scenery outside the window changed. The Hinamizawa Dam project must be withdrawn. Overthrow the shameless puppet of a governor. The dam will submerge the natural beauty of Hinamizawa. Protect the village from the unethical dam. Fear the wrath of Yashiro-sama's curse. Well, that's different. Demolish the dam. Those involved must go away. The construction office must respond. The construction office manager must negotiate with us. Signs and banners crowded the roadside. Even reading the brush-scrawled words was daunting. It was as though where the road just changed was a border with a different country. Definitely feels like that at times. At that moment, I was startled by the car suddenly braking. Looking ahead, a barricade had been erected. About 5 or 6 protesters wearing masks and helmets to hide their faces were blocking the road, yelling at us angrily to stop.
これは何ですか？検問？
はあ？懲りない連中だな。
Higurashi snorted as he rolled down the window and leaned out.
おいおいおい。あんたらダメだよ、こんなとこで道を塞いじゃ。
As Higurashi glared at them with a malicious laugh, they visibly faltered.
道開けてくださいな。それじゃ通れないでしょ。
Who would have thought that it was Higurashi's car that panicked? That panic thought seemed to make them lose their presence of mind. Excuse me.
大石刑事の車と分かってればこんなご無礼はしなかったんですがね。大石刑事、いつもの車はどうされました？車検ですか？
そんなところです。台車ってのはどうにも馴染みませんね。
Judging from their brief conversation, I could guess that they were familiar with the license plate of the car Higurashi normally used. In other words, if they knew the car belonged to the police, they would have hidden the barricade. What they were doing was obviously obstruction of traffic. A blatant crime.
そっちの怪しい男は誰です？あんた、顔を見せてくれませんか？
The man glared at me menacingly. Wearing a mask and sunglasses made me look particularly dubious. Would not showing my face get me into some unnecessary trouble? I turned to Ushi to see what I should do.
彼の顔は勘弁してあげてください。まだまだ新米でシャイなんですからね。
不審な輩じゃないか確認しようってだけです。最近のひなみさんは物騒ですからね。
あんたのうち鏡歪んでるのと違います。あんたのその面の方がよっぽど不審ですよ。
The men and Ushi continued to talk like that, feigning smiles at one another. However, from the beginning to the end, I couldn't get over the feeling that I was sitting on a powder keg.
ゴミの不法投棄車両まだ減らないんですか。オタクたちも本当に朝晩大変ですね。
警察の方にもご理解とご協力をいただけて助かりますよ。
During that conversation, the barricade was moved, leaving a gap wide enough for a single car to get through. Ushi lightly honked the horn once and began to roll the car forward. I could see the men's antagonistic glares at the back of the car in the rearview mirror.
何ですかさっきのは。勝手に行動を封鎖するなんて。
もちろん犯罪ですよ。目くじら立てても始まりませんがね。
Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it happens today.
連中の主張じゃですね、村内に不法投棄をするトラックが出没するっていうんです。それを封じ込めるために不審車両を検問してるって話だそうで。
不法投棄？参拝を勝手に捨てようとする悪徳業者のことですか？
警察が何の手も打たないから自分たちで自衛するっていう論法でしてね。
Ah, of course.
まあ参拝なんて話はどうせ自演だからどうでもいいんですがね。
自演？
連中うまい作戦なんですよ。ダム現場にですね、工事妨害のために参拝ゴミを自分たちでばらまいてるんです。で、それを悪徳業者のせいってことにして臨検を設置すると。それで工事車両をいちいち足止めしてチクチクと妨害してるってわけなんです。
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の抵抗運動の一つというわけですね。
多分今の検問でこの車のナンバーが割れましたからね。もうこの先には一切検問の真似事はないと思います。連中も私を怒らせると得をしないことだけはよーく骨身に染みているようですからね。
And it's probably factual that those guys don't like him, and the village really doesn't either, but they're trying not to get in too much trouble with the police.
この車が工事関係車両だと知れるとですね、散々検問で足止めを食らうばかりか、投石や鉄釘のばらまきなんかも食らうって噂です。あなたも身元が割れないようにせいぜい気をつけた方がいいですよ。公安なんてバレたらどんな目に遭うやら。
Ushi was acting like we were talking about something fun, but for me it was no laughing matter.
なるでどこぞの内戦の国に迷い込んだような錯覚です。
あんた、そりゃうまい言い方です。今言われたのはまさにその通り。
Ushi turned to me with a grin and menacing laugh.
ここはね、戦争地帯なんですよ。
The car slowed down a bit as it went down a narrow road through some farmland.
あそこの森の中に家があるのが見えます？古い感じの。
Looking at where Ushi was pointing, there certainly was an old traditionally designed house.
あれが村長の君吉のじいさんの家です。君吉本家とも言いますな。分家筋が多いですから御三家の一つにあたります。
御三家、Hinamizawa村を支配している旧家ですね。
そうそう。で、もう一つが古出家。こっちは分家どころかもう神主一家しか残ってませんがね。ちょうどあっちの方にね、そこの神主をしています。ちなみにね、死守同盟の事務所はその神社の敷地内にあります。
The office of the Onigafuchi Guardians. If these guys were the enemy, that would make the shrine their stronghold.
そこを見ることはできますか？
神社は古出家の私有地でね、警察といえど令状がないと踏み込めません。電柱のバックには村の息のかかった議員もいますからね。警察にも 強いところと弱いところがあるってことです。御三家とは言ってもですね、そりゃだいぶ大昔のことなんだそうです。大昔はその御三家ってのは合議して村のいろいろなことを決めてたらしいですな。
ということは
あんたいちいち察しがいいですね。さすが高学歴。
The car braked to a halt with a squeal. Ahead of where we were stopped were several signs, excuse me. Private property beyond, no trespassing. Beware of poisonous snakes. Danger, turn back. This sounds very familiar. Intruders will be charged an entry fee of 1 million yen. Signs were erected there with things like that written on them. The road was separated from the forest by a chain-link fence wrapped in barbed wire.
私有地なんでここまでです。この先は監視カメラがいくつも仕掛けられてます。うっかり道に迷いました。なんて論法が通じる相手じゃありませんからね。
この先がそうなんですね。
The people currently controlling Hinamizawa and the Onigafuchi Guardians were neither the Kimiyoshi family nor the Furude family, but the last of the three.
この先にあるのが御三家の一つ、園崎家。Hinamizawa村を影から支配する連中です。
Among the list of executives recorded in the documents, the number of people with the last names from the three families was quite high. Of course, Sonozaki was no exception, excuse me. However, at the top was the Kimiyoshi family. If the Kimiyoshi family seemed to be in charge, the rulers behind the scenes were the Sonozaki family. This double-layered structure implicitly told me that this village had both a light and a dark side.
園崎家の頂点は現当主の園崎お涼っていうばあさんです。園崎天皇なんて呼ばれるくらいにその発言には影響力があるそうです。気をつけてくださいよ。大物です。市長だって最敬礼でお迎えするような VIP ですからね。まあHinamizawaと周辺の町に住む村の親族の数千の評伝を固めてるわけですから、政治家は頭上がらないんでしょうが。
つまりその人物が鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の事実上のトップということですね。
At this moment, yes.
そうなります。
With those words, Ueshi pulled out a well-worn cigarette box. The suspected kidnapping of the minister's grandchild and subsequent threats, were these part of the hidden plot by the Onigafuchi Guardians in order to have the Hinamizawa Dam project cancelled? Oh, trust me, they'll do a little bit more.
東京からはるばる調べにいらしたんですよね。
ええ、そうですか。何か。
じゃあほら、犬飼大臣への直訴事件の絡みですかな。要するに、あれで要注意団体ってことで公安がマークすることになったと。そういう感じですか。
大石さんこそお察しが早くて助かります。
While exhaling out cigarette smoke, Ueshi smiled broadly, like I'd just pulled a good one on him. Or so I thought. His smile disappeared suddenly.
嘘でしょ。だから、直訴事件でマークがついたっての、嘘でしょ。
Ueshi knew there was no way that Tokyo HQ would dispatch an investigator over something as minor as a direct appeal. If they were to dispatch someone, it had to be for a more dire reason. He had figured out as much. I thought of myself as the type of person who doesn't let things show on their face. In front of his watchful gaze, however, I felt that what I was thinking was completely laid bare. Excuse me. Ueshi silently lit another cigarette as if waiting for me to interject during this awkward pause. I see. So this was a veteran detective's way of getting someone to spill information. But as long as I realized this, there would be nothing more. If I didn't open my mouth, I wouldn't have to lose anything. Are we just gonna sit here? All I had to do was stare out the window and enjoy the scenery until Ueshi gave up.
あなたって人は本当に隠し事が下手な人ですね。そういう素直で初々しいの悪くないな。
Ueshi smirked as he twisted out his third cigarette, while I tried not to let him notice that I had yielded completely. At first I thought I had won, but at the very least Ueshi had ascertained that I was hiding something, meaning that I might have ended up marching to his tune. Like him or not, Ueshi really is a smart man. I just think his way of going about a lot of things is kind of fucked. Ueshi started up the engine once again and began to move the car.
素直なところを教えてくれりゃもっとお力になれると思ったんですがね。
素直に話したら
If the
どう
cat was out
力
of
に
the
なれるんです。
Sorry. If the cat was out of the bag, I might as well use it to catch some mice.
内容によりけりですがね。南沢界隈に詳しい情報屋に引き合わせてあげてもいいですよ。
協力員ですか？
そっか。あんたらはそう呼ぶんでしたね。
どうして私の任務に興味を？大石さん。
そりゃあんたと同じです。常に知るのが私たちの仕事じゃありませんか。
Being able to meet with Ueshi's informant was an extremely compelling opportunity. We were looking to recruit somebody familiar with the area to collaborate with for intelligence, In the end, there was no better method for finding people than asking. We were always taught, however, that the rank-and-file police were no better than monkeys. Unlike us, they were careless with confidential cases. We looked down on them like they'd run their mouth off in a drunken stupor. Ueshi was an outlaw even amongst them, And here I was lost on whether or not I should tell him about the kidnapping of the minister's grandson.
その情報協力員はどの程度鬼ヶ淵死守同盟に精通を？
あんたも公安の人間ならわかるでしょう。そんなの私の口からたとえあなたにだって話せるわけないじゃありませんか。
Protect your sources. That was the first principle of dealing with confidential information. In that regard, it seemed that Ueshi wasn't one of those monkeys. Should I trust him? Ask for his help? Or not?
あなたは国、私は金に雇われてますがね。私たちの職務はそう大きくは違わないと思っています。力になれると思うんですがね。
However, I had trouble believing that this crafty old man would simply help me just like he claimed. Now, how should I go about this?
大石さんほどの方が無償で力になってくださるとはちょっと思いがたいですが。
There we go. I knew he was talking about himself because, of every fucking thing that's gone on in every chapter so far.
そりゃ下心がないわけじゃないです。あんたらは確か協力員に支払える謝礼用の予算を持ってますよね。領収書不要な予算を。そいつでですね、情報屋との接触にかかるコストをちょいと。
つまり情報屋と渡りをつける謝礼をあなたにお支払いしろということですね。取引内容が明快で助かります。
He certainly was something else for being able to brazenly state his ulterior motive like this. Rather than him doing this out of the kindness of his heart, everything was a lot clearer if he was being compensated for this deal. I felt that he was the type of man who was good at these backroom dealings.
誤解しないでくださいよ。お金が必要なのは私にじゃなくて情報屋になんですからね。まあ支払いの関係上お金は私が預かりますがね。
支払いはいつ？
今すぐがいいですね。ないなら明日でもいいんですよ。
I pulled out a wallet that was different from my personal one. The price was pretty much fixed depending on what kind of information I was paying for. In this case, the payment was up front. Also, considering the fact I didn't know what kind of info I would get, I shouldn't pay too much. When I suggested that, Ueshi suddenly stretched out his hand and tightly grasped the contents of the wallet.
こういう時はですね、ケチ大丈夫大丈夫、損はさせませんから。
わかりました。ケチケチしないことにします。
で、調べたい情報は何です？内容によって多少アプローチが変わることもありますので。
他言無用を誓ってもらえますか、大石さん。
誓うまでもありませんよ。私もあなたたちと同じ。 職務上知り得たことは他言できませんからね。わかりましたよ。誓います。ここで聞くことは他言無用です。
Unless there's a price tag on it.
それにあなたのおかげで溜まってたツケを全部返せるんですからね。私は少なくとも金の絡んだ約束は絶対に違いませんよ。
I was still unsure if I should trust him until the very last moment, but in the end I broke down. Ueshi wasn't the type of guy I could trust 100%, but there was no mistaking he had access to underground information networks. In order to accomplish my mission swiftly, I needed his cooperation. I set my resolve.
鬼ヶ淵主導名がある事件に関与しているか否かを調査しています。
ある事件？
犬飼建設大臣が何者かに脅迫を受けている可能性があります。
可能性とはまた遠回しな言い方ですね。
大臣の近辺に内通者がいるらしいのです。その内通者によって高度に監視されているらしく、大臣は脅迫初期から屈服している様子です。警察へも我々へも一切通報していません。
なるほど。だから脅迫を受けている可能性という言い方になると。だとすると妙ですね。大臣が誰にも通報しないなら、どうしてあんたらは事件を知ったんです？
If we didn't spy on the minister's private life, we would have never found out.
その説明は私が情報屋に提供する必要がないと思われるので割愛します。
Ueshi had apparently caught on and quietly chuckled when I refused to explain.
なるほど。大臣の近辺にスパイがいるらしいから、公安だけの極秘調査ということになったわけですか。そりゃあ確かに穏便な話じゃないですね。
ことを公にすれば、大臣の政治生命も含め、政変に発展する可能性は極めて高いでしょう。犯人グループの目的がそこにあるならば、有識事態に発展する可能性があります。
政府の列島改造は、まあいろいろ方々との衝突も多いらしいですからね。どんなささやかなケチでも一つつけば、野党勢力がドット票を伸ばす可能性もあると。
大臣がどのような要求を受けているのかは現在調査中です。ですが脅迫の方法だけはほぼ分かっています。
何です？
大臣の孫の誘拐です。周辺は否定していますが、最後の目撃から見てすでに誘拐後72時間が経過していると思われます。
3日ですか。並の身代金目的ならもう決着してますね。
金銭でなく大臣に何らかの政治的なアクションを要求している可能性が極めて高いでしょう。それを我々は黙認するわけにはいきません。
で、それの犯人グループとの可能性として鬼ヶ淵死守同盟がリストに上がったわけですね。
そうです。
大臣の孫を誘拐してダム計画の撤回を求めるか。
どうでしょう、大石さん。その可能性はあなたから見てあり得ると思いますか？
Ueshi seemed to ponder the idea for a while. The section chief at the regional office had responded immediately with, "It's possible." However, Ueshi, who was this well informed about the matter, was hemming and hawing. Finally, just a little bit, he said something that was really just a little bit strange.
明治前まではですね、この辺りはhinamizawa村って名前じゃなくて鬼ヶ淵村って呼ばれてたそうです。うちのばあ様の受け売りですがね。
This topic was so completely and suddenly unrelated to the subject of the kidnapping of the minister's grandson that I was taken slightly aback.
鬼ヶ淵村。それで鬼ヶ淵主導名という名称になったわけですね。
鬼ヶ淵村ってのはですね、人食い鬼の住む村だと言われてたんだそうです。今でも村人は自分の体に鬼の血が半分流れてると信じてます。
人食い鬼。大石さん、それ何の話ですか？
情報ですよ。さっきあなたからたくさんもらっちゃいましたからね。少しもらいすぎました。その分サービスしてあげてるんですよ。
Ueshi finally smiled, but it didn't seem like he was fooling around.
先を続けてください。
人食い鬼たちはですね、普段は仙人と崇められてひっそりと暮らしているんですがね、やっぱり人食いですから定期的に麓の村に降りてきては獲物をさらっていったんだそうです。それをですね、鬼隠しと言いまして。
Demoned away. It was the first time I heard such a peculiar phrase. However, I felt something slightly ominous from this horrifying tale of demons abducting people in order to eat them.
ほら、よく世間一般に神隠しっていうのがあるじゃないですか。人がある日突然失踪してしまうとそう言うでしょ。この辺りでは同じことがあると鬼隠しって呼ぶんです。
その昔話と本件に何か関係が？
いえいえ、直接的には何の関係もない。ただのおしゃべりですがね。ただ。
Ka-thump, ka-thump. The car shook. At some point, the gravel road had changed to a paved one.
ただ、何です？
この土地に鬼隠しという名の失踪、誘拐を暗示するキーワードがある。今回の大臣の孫の誘拐と関係あるかは分かりませんがね。まあ、深い話ではないんです。そんな言われの話があるということだけでもね。
Onikakushi, human-eating demons coming down to the foothills and abducting their prey. Then, in order to cancel the dam project that threatened to submerge the village they lived in, did they demon away the minister's grandson? Then, had they already made an example out of the minister's grandson and eaten him alive?
ちょっと興味深い昔話ですね。
鬼たちの村にみだりに踏み入れば、たちまち囚われ食い殺される。だから鬼が淵村には近づくな。今時の若者はこんな迷信信じませんがね。沖宮の明治生まれの年寄り連中には今でも真面目に信じてるのが多いですよ。
Hinamizawa village was feared by the people in the area. I recalled that piece of information I heard from the Prefectural Public Safety Division.
何しろこの辺は田舎ですからね。迷信なんかが平気で幅を利かせてるんです。東京から来られた赤坂さんにはちょっと想像もつかないでしょうがね。
The man-eating demons, as the prize for violating the sanctity, of their village, kidnapped the minister's grandson and swallowed him whole. That ludicrous idea flew through my head. It was so absurd, I was half disgusted with myself. I wish he was just teasing me. Stupid. It was all really so stupid. Come to think of it, by then, I may have already been seized by the curse of that dubious village. For me to realize that would take a little more time. Are we done with this? This section? Yep. We are finally done there. Got a little tour of the village, which was nice. Absolutely. Get Akasaka's opinion on things here. Oh, wow. Yeah, we got some tips. All right. Mamma mia. Land of the Demons is the name of this one, of this achievement. I guess let's go through the tips and we will wrap up this episode. We have a lot to go through. We have a phone call with our woman. Yeehaw.
そうですか。急な出張は大変ですね。どうぞお気をつけて。出張はどちらへですか？もう出張先なんですか？
Whenever I headed out on a assignment, she would ask me where. Not just, okay, her name's actually not Yuki, apparently, because of the E at the end. I think it's like Yukie or something, or maybe you just combine the I and the E. I have no idea. I'm too stupid. But anybody would have asked the same question. If it was a cold place, she would urge me to pack a thick jacket. If it was far, she'd warn me to be careful on the drive over. If it was just normal everyday concern that led to asking such an obvious thing, I felt sad that I couldn't answer such a run-of-the-mill question.
ごめんなさい。言ってはいけない規則でしたね。どうかお気をつけて。
すまん、ユキ。
Okay, see, it's not Yuki, it's like Yukie. Yeah.
あなたはいつの頃からすぐに謝られるようになったんでしょう。 今のお仕事に疲れた最初はあれだけはつらつと充実していらっしゃったのに。
Yukie laughed as though she had realized something. At times like this, Yukie had the magical power to see right through me.
私が入院してもう随分になりますものね。あなたもそろそろ寂しくなってきましたか？
からかうなよ。寂しがるような年じゃないさ。
さてさていかがでしょう。あなたは本当に甘えん坊さんですからね。私と一緒でないとだんだん弱気になってきてしまうのでしょ。
Gosh.
もう今雪絵の頭に小悪魔の角がにょっきりと生えているのが目に浮かぶよ。君は昔から
はぐらかさないはぐらかさない。私に構ってもらえなくて寂しい寂しいって。あなたが尻尾を振っている音が受話器を通しても聞こえてきますよ。
Damn, she really be throwing this bone. This side of Yukie wasn't something you could guess existed from seeing her usual modest behavior, and it was something that she didn't show to anybody else but me. Normally I'd poke her to hide my embarrassment and bring an end to the conversation, but I couldn't do that over the phone. Of course Yukie was clever. She was teasing me because of that.
あなたを困らせるのがこんなに楽しいと気づいたのはいつからだったでしょうね。
そろそろ許してくれよ。とにかく君の元気な声が聞けてよかった。
そうでしょう。元気になれましたか？
I had called Yukie to keep her from feeling lonely when she was by herself in the hospital room. Of course, that was nothing more than a pretense that I, being shy, had come up with. It seemed that Yukie had long since seen through that act.
また電話をしてくださいな。私がダメな時はお父さんが相手をしてくれるでしょう。
Uh-oh.
もっともお父さんが相手ではあなたのことだから電話先でも直立不動で喋っていそう。
For a while longer, Yukie kept teasing me without letting me end the call. Well, that was nice. Definitely shows that cuter side between that couple. A record of opening remarks. Wonder what this will be about. Chairman, whatever, members of the whatever party, congratulations are due as we are celebrating 25 years since our founding. These past 25 years have seen much growth in whatever prefecture. The once quiet scenery of nothing but fields now has seen the opening of a new stop for the bullet train, and with the development of the highway, we've seen the rebirth of a modern city bursting with youthful energy. We've reaped the benefits of new businesses and industry, and with the special reverence and residents of whatever prefecture have for time-honored traditions, history and culture, business and industry, with these ideals in harmony, they have accomplished in growing their city into one of Japan's foremost metropolises. Of course, the development of whatever prefecture couldn't have happened without the growth of the whatever party. We are resolved to see every one of our campaign promises in fruition, reaching our targets definitively and exponentially, like arrows fired from a bow. With these arrows as the fundamental basis of the whatever party, our members have sought to pierce the obstructions preventing the happiness of the residents of whatever prefecture. But I do believe that everybody here is unlike an ordinary arrow. While being an unfaltering and straightforward, we have not neglected in seeking solutions that conform to the current day and age, while also keeping an eye on the future. An arrow once loosed can only fly to its destination. Everyone here, however, is no simple arrow. Even once loosed from the bow, without neglecting our studies, while employing new methods and implementing more effective and flexible ideas, thus being able to change trajectories mid-flight, we are magical arrows. The modern age marches ever forward. Sometimes it marches faster than the time taken from planning to execution. The following part was not in the script. It is thought to have been ad-libbed by the minister. For example, there have recently been numerous problems with the Hinamizawa power plant project. Rather than forcing through the project solely because it was decided upon by the government, it is necessary to reflect on and adjust to the ever-changing needs of the residents, the region, and the next generation. The protests by the local residents that surround the Hinamizawa Dam, these are also the will of the people of the whatever prefecture. If you feel that there is no need to listen because the project has already been finalized, then you do nothing more than shed a poor light on Japan's post-war democracy. The following is as per the script. For the lasting happiness of the citizens of Japan and the residents of whatever prefecture, please consider these policies thoroughly. I believe, however, we have all gained something from the flexibility and foresight of the whatever party. I have taken up much of your time, however, allow me to say the following to celebrate the 25th anniversary of our founding. Chairman whatever, members of the whatever party in attendance, thank you very much for today. From the opening remarks of the whatever party prefectural forum and 25th anniversary celebration. Too much politics for me right there. I didn't catch a bit of that. Gears and fire and the taste of honey. That's a fucking name. Okay. The world is filled with people blessed with relationships. Of course, that doesn't mean that everyone is connected to each other. It's obvious that on the other side of the planet there are people laughing and crying who can't possibly have an effect on you. However, in the extremely limited community of the neighborhood, that sort of connection is just a matter of fact. It's quite possible that a single remarkable event, I almost died, could have massive consequences inside a small community. If you were to increase that in scale, a perfect stranger on the other side of the globe might become enough of a legend to have an effect on our lives. Well, it's not always that way. Like I said at the beginning, the links between people basically aren't that relevant in the grand scheme of things. Whether some household nearby is having steak or croquettes doesn't matter to me. When I put on my shoes, it doesn't matter to anybody whether I put the right one on first or the left. This much the average person can understand. But actually, in reality, this is the truth. The bonds between people are quite well defined. It's not just a matter of distance, but being far or near. For example, let's say that person A's actions have some effect on me. Even then, person B's actions could have absolutely no consequence on my life. The reverse also holds true. Just because my actions affect person A, that doesn't always mean that they affect person B as well. Let's put it bluntly. If the bonds between people are like gears in a machine, the gear that represents me meshes with some people, but is isolated from others. There are some who would try arguing against this. Those people would bring up the example of gears in a clock. Each gear indeed only directly meshes with one or two others. However, if you rotate one gear, the one next to it is moved, which connects to the next one, and the next. In the end, all the gears are moving. There is a logic behind this, more than enough to convince the average person. Why is the argument convincing? The answer is simple. The relationships between people are ambiguous and can only be described conceptually. However, the gears are connected, and how their movements are chained together can't be used as a fundamental explanation, so it throws a wet blanket on that argument. So for the people who like that explanation, I'll use the example of a clock again to refute it. First of all, to say that this world is a singular clock could be wrong, or would be wrong. That is, there isn't only one clock. There exist many clocks in this world, each counting their own time. If you think about it, the idea that this world is just one big clock is the height of arrogance. Even if you use the analogy of gears to explain human relationships, then you should be able to explain it using an analogy of multiple clocks unrelated to a single gear. Neighbors A and B. A is a gear in the same clock as me, so it's best to remain civil. B is a gear in a different clock, so he doesn't really matter to me at all. That's the kind of clear distinction I'm talking about. You want to say I'm being fallacious? Then let's change the analogy to something more familiar so you can understand. You've probably heard the phrase, a fire on the opposite shore, sometime in your life, no? For example, if your neighbor's house is on fire, you'd probably try and help to put it out, wouldn't you? It'd be awful if the fire spread and burned down your own house after all. But what if that fire was in a town on the opposite side of a river? Would you still go out of your way to help? You wouldn't, would you? Even though it would be the wrong thing to do, there's no way the fire could spread to your own house, even if it turned into a huge conflagration. There's no relation between the houses that will spread fire to yours and those that won't. With this basic example, you should be able to see the difference between gears that are or aren't related to your own. Having said that, there's still a lot to think about, even without a river to divide it. After all, it's not a spatial problem like being on the other side of the river, is it? What did all that have to do with this? Did that have to kind of relate with how Hinamizawa is set up? Or is that foreshadowing for something to come? I wonder. That was interesting, don't get me wrong, but, you know, what's the point? The chick in the trunk. Alright, yeah, that changes things. The car had stopped, but he didn't know any more than that. For not only was he blindfolded, but locked in the trunk of the car. How could people become this powerless just by being robbed of their sight? He absolutely wouldn't have known this without experiencing it firsthand. He soon realized it was pointless to try and undo his bonds, with the confines of the trunk quickly making him lightheaded. He had no choice but to let this mild torture dull his senses. And that's why when the car stopped, and the unpleasant vibration ceased as the engine was killed, he couldn't help but delude himself that he was being set free, even though nothing had been resolved in reality. Of course, he was soon removed from that delusion. He strained his ears when he heard one of the men who had abducted him and an older man he was hearing for the first time strike up a conversation.
お疲れさんです。ヒナはトランクに。騒ぎすぎで多少衰弱してるようですが、ご命令通り、傷一つつけちゃいません。
おう、手間はかけましたの。
Alrighty. The trunk opened, letting in a blast of fresh, cool air. Even though up until now he had just been thinking about getting out of that stuffy trunk, when it was actually open, he suddenly became uneasy. Enough so that he had wished that the lid of the trunk would once again close, separating himself from them. Suddenly somebody stroked his head. Of course, since he was blindfolded, he couldn't tell if the hand was petting him or simply evaluating how easy it would be to remove his scalp. Unable to tell the difference, he could only freeze as he imagined the worst-case scenario.
たらん、愛そうにの。震えとんね。おとなしくしばらく過ごすがよかろう。
The older man said that kindly as he gently stroked the boy's head.
ほんに辛い思いしちゃろな。だがな、おんめのおじいちゃんは優しい人だんね。すぐに助けてくれるだろうの。
Having heard nothing but the average standard dialect in his whole life, the older man's distinct intonation, left a deep impression on the boy. But he had no idea what he was saying. For your gramps to register as meaning your grandfather took a while to process. Eventually, the hand that was stroking his head loosened the blindfold.
目隠しはまずいっすよ。面が割れると後々まずいです。
ああ、そうかの。なんら、せめて猿靴はくらい外したらんな。これぎゃ、息もできんね。
叫ばれたらまずいです。こいつのことは俺たちに任せてください。
たく、気の利かんやっちゃらな。本家にむごい仕打ちは戦議やっちゃっとる。
Oh, main family, huh?
そこんとこ、肝に刻むんよ。
わかってます。手荒な真似はしませんよ。小僧がおとなしくしててくれる分にはね。
The man's hand prodded roughly and repeatedly at the boy's head. A rugged hand unlike the affectionate one that had been stroking his head before. Just stay cooperative. If you struggle, there's no guarantee what will happen. That cliched threat was literally beaten into his head. Well, I wish we could have seen a little bit more there, but whatever. Alrighty, let's jump into the next one so I can save the game easily, and we will wrap her up here. What a nice hotel. It's saying it's a cheap one, but it looks decent enough. That's not where you go to save the game. Sorry. Alrighty. That was a fun episode. Got a lot of information on this one. A lot that we knew, but it's nice to get it in a more streamlined manner, more straightforward, not all over the place. I don't know. Well, thank you for watching this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.